So, you know that feeling when you just hit send on a highly critical email?
Oh, yeah, the absolute worst.
Right. Like maybe it's to a hiring manager
Yeah.
or maybe it's to your boss, or perhaps you are finalizing a patient chart for an attending physician.
Which is incredibly stressful on its own.
Exactly. And as that message just sort of whooshes away into the digital ether, your eyes lock onto one specific word in the very last sentence.
Yeah, let me guess.
You typed THERE instead of THEIR, and your stomach just completely drops.
It really does. Because it completely changes how you view that moment of dread, you know,
Yeah.
that highly specific flavor of panic.
Yes.
The realization that you've just made a very public, very permanent typo. It's something we've all felt.
And your immediate reaction is always like, how did I do that? I mean, I know the
Yeah,
difference.
you absolutely know the rule.
Well, today we are doing a deep dive into the absolute textbook case of this exact anxiety. We're looking at commonly confused words.
Which is such a fascinating topic.
It really is. Specifically, we are zeroing in on the ultimate trio that haunts our keyboards. There, and
A
there.
big three.
The big three. And, while mastering this is critical prep for anyone sitting down to take high-stakes assessments like the TEAS or the HESI nursing entrance exams, this is truly a masterclass for any curious learner who wants to bulletproof their writing.
Completely agree.
We are going to explore the mechanics of this trap, the thousand-year-old linguistic collision that caused it, and cognitive workarounds to outsmart your own brain. Plus, the real reason high-stakes professions use this as a gatekeeping metric. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah. So to fix the mistake, we first have to understand the specific mechanism of the confusion. I mean, the technical term we are dealing with here is a homophone.
Right, a homophone.
Exactly. And the word itself kind of gives us the blueprint. It comes from the Greek roots homos, meaning same, and phone, meaning sound.
Same sound.
Right. These are words that sound completely identical when spoken, but they possess entirely different spellings and different meanings.
So you have three distinct words, three unique grammatical jobs, but they share one single identical acoustic footprint.
That is exactly it.
Though, the boundaries of what actually constitutes a commonly confused word can get surprisingly blurry depending on where you look.
Oh, for sure.
Like, strict linguists prefer to keep the homophone category pure. Words like two, and two.
Right. The exact same sound.
But if you look at how major dictionary publishers structure their style guides, they take a much more, I guess, pragmatic approach. They just throw everything into the same bucket.
They really do.
Yeah, they include near homophones, which differ just slightly in sound, like affect versus effect. They even include visual lookalikes, like desert and dessert, or semantic mix-ups, like imply versus infer, where the confusion is purely conceptual.
Which honestly is a highly practical way to categorize them for a learner.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because for the people writing the TEAS and HESI exams, or, for a manager reading your email, the underlying mechanism of your confusion doesn't really change the outcome on the page.
Right.
The outcome is always the same. A writer substitutes one correctly spelled word for another.
And because both words are technically legitimate, standard spell check software just sails right past the error.
It does. It doesn't flag a thing.
Which brings up a massive misconception we need to dismantle right now. Because there is this pervasive assumption that when someone mixes up there and there, it means they are uneducated.
Oh, I hate that assumption.
Me too. Or
Yeah.
people think it is some modern consequence of texting eroding our attention spans. And I just don't buy that.
No, it's not that at all.
Because when you or I make that typo, it's almost never a failure of knowledge. Think about how you drive a car.
Okay.
Like, you are trying to go to a new grocery store, but you are so lost in thought about your day that you accidentally take your usual exit for home.
Right. You just go on autopilot.
Exactly. Your declarative memory knows the rule and the destination, but your procedural memory, the autopilot, just completely hijacked the wheel.
That procedural hijacking is exactly how linguists view this phenomenon. I mean, they classified it as a transcription slip, not a knowledge gap.
A transcription slip. I like that.
Yeah, because when you speak in fast, everyday conversation, those three words are genuinely indistinguishable. You aren't pausing to, articulate the apostrophe in there.
Right. You're not saying they apostrophe R-E.
Exactly. So when you are typing quickly, your fingers are essentially transcribing your own inner voice.
Oh.
Your brain is generating language at the speed of thought. And to get the spelling right, you have to actively, consciously override that auditory input with a mechanical, visual rule.
So the autopilot takes over, and the inner voice just prints whatever spelling is most deeply grooved into your muscle memory.
Precisely. And standard technology is entirely blind to this transcription slip.
Right, the software doesn't care.
It really doesn't. There is a fantastic real-world case study of this from 2017. The Ohio Department of Transportation had to scramble to correct a massive permanent highway sign they had just installed over an interstate.
Oh no. Over an interstate.
Yes. The giant reflective letters read, "You're entering speed zone." But they spelled it Y-O-U-R.
Oh my gosh. A completely permanent taxpayer-funded typo hanging right over a highway.
Right. And it happened because the design software spell checker gave it a green light.
Because Y-O-U-R is a real word.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Historically, spell checkers validate letter strings, not grammatical roles. The software checks if Y-O-U-R exists in its dictionary database. And it does.
Wow.
It doesn't check if a possessive pronoun has any logical business sitting in front of a participle phrase. Technology won't save you from your own inner voice.
Okay, so if this is fundamentally a transcription slip and these words sound exactly the same in our heads, it raises a rather massive question for me. Why did English fracture the spelling to begin with? I mean, if the sound is identical, why didn't we just pick one spelling and stick with it?
See, what's fascinating here is that we are actually looking at the aftermath of a 1,000-year-old phonological collision course.
Wait, 1,000 years old?
Yeah. This isn't just some random quirk of spelling. These words originated in completely different places, entered the language at different times, and slowly crashed into each other.
Okay, lay this out for me.
Let's start with THERE, the spatial placeholder, referring to a place.
Okay.
This is a native resident of the language. It descends directly from the Old English word agware. It has been spoken on the British Isles in some form, essentially since the Anglo-Saxons arrived.
So there's the original occupant, but then we have THEIR, the possessive pronoun, and this is where the Vikings enter the picture, right?
They absolutely do. There is an invader.
An invader word.
Yes. It was borrowed from Old Norse, specifically the word ara, during the Viking settlements of England between the 9th and 11th centuries. And in the field of linguistics, this is an incredibly rare event. Pronouns belong to what is known as a closed class of words.
What does that mean, closed class?
It means languages happily borrow nouns and verbs all the time. Like, we adopt words like sushi or karaoke from other cultures without a second thought.
Sure, that makes sense.
But structural, grammatical words like pronouns. Borrowing a pronoun is like trying to swap out the transmission of a car while you were driving down the highway at 70 miles an hour.
That sounds dangerous.
It is. It almost never happens.
Which means the Old Norse there must have solved a major problem for English speakers at the time, right?
Exactly.
Because the native Old English possessive pronouns were hyra and higora, which probably sounded way too similar to other pronouns, creating a lot of acoustic confusion.
Spot on.
So the Viking word was likely adopted because it was clearer to the ear. It upgraded the spoken language, but ironically, it laid the groundwork for a massive trap in the written language centuries later.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. It solved an auditory problem, but created a visual one. Wow. And then there was the apostrophe, which is really the baby of the group.
Right, the contraction.
Yeah, it only emerged when apostrophe-marked contractions started becoming a formalized standard in English orthography, which didn't truly take hold until the 16th and 17th centuries.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because these words crashed into each other over centuries, there was a long period where people were walking around pronouncing them the exact same way, but there was no rigid spelling rule book.
None at all.
You just sounded it out, and the mistake of mixing them up didn't actually exist. Because you can't commit a spelling error if society hasn't agreed on an official spelling yet.
Exactly. The standardization of the language essentially mapped the borders. And in doing so, it created the trespassers.
That's a great way to phrase it.
The real turning point was the publication of comprehensive dictionaries. When Samuel Johnson published his Dictionary of the English Language in 1755,
Right.
and later when Noah Webster published his American Dictionary in 1828, they froze English spellings in place.
You locked it down.
They took a fluid phonetic language and gave schools a fixed stationary target to test students on.
And because Johnson and Webster froze these spellings into a permanent trap, we now have to rely on conscious, mechanical workarounds to bypass our brain's autopilot.
We do. We can't rely on our ear anymore.
Right, we have to use cognitive forcing functions. So let's look at the actual first principles of those workarounds.
Right.
If you were sitting down for a nursing exam or, proofreading a critical report, how do you actively break that transcription slip?
We have to move away from simply trying to just remember the rule and instead apply mechanical tests that force the brain to evaluate the sentence's structure.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's tackle Rule 1. They're with an apostrophe. This is the contraction for they are.
Right.
The cognitive forcing function here is the expansion test. Whenever you use there with an apostrophe, you force yourself to read the sentence aloud, fully expanding the word.
Okay, so by forcing your brain to process they are, you create a moment of cognitive friction.
Yes,
So
exactly.
let's say you type, make sure their paperwork is signed, using the apostrophe.
Apply the expansion test to that exact sentence. Make sure their paperwork is signed.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It fails instantly, right? It generates immediate, obvious cognitive dissonance.
Because they are paperwork makes absolutely no sense.
The brain recognizes the absurdity of it, and you instantly know you've selected the wrong tool for the job.
Which leads us to Rule 2, THEIR, the possessive pronoun showing ownership. The forcing function here is the substitution test.
Right. If you can swap in the words our or my, and the sentence still fundamentally maintains its structural logic, you have a winner.
Okay, so take the sentence, the students reviewed their HESI scores.
Swap it out. The students reviewed our HESI scores, or my HESI scores.
Yeah, that totally works.
The sentence still functions perfectly because the underlying grammatical architecture, which is ownership, remains intact.
Therefore, THEIR is correct.
Exactly. And a vital non-negotiable side note to remember here,
Possessive pronouns.
never take an apostrophe, ever.
Good tip. And that leaves us with Rule 3, THERE. I find it most helpful to frame this one as the structural placeholder.
The placeholder, right.
It's doing one of two distinct jobs in your sentence. It's either a spatial word answering the question where, as in put the patient's chart over there,
Right.
or it's acting as a syntactic dummy subject.
The dummy subject is such a fascinating linguistic tool.
It really is.
It allows you to construct a sentence where the true subject actually follows the verb.
Like saying, there are 4 vital signs to monitor. The vital signs are the actual subjects of the sentence, but there is just holding the structural space at the front of the line so the sentence doesn't collapse on itself.
Yes. So if the word doesn't expand to they are, and it doesn't show ownership where you can swap in are, you're almost universally looking at the placeholder, THERE. Now, to make sure your mental map of these linguistic traps is crystal clear, we should briefly contrast homophones with a few neighboring errors that often get lumped into the same discussion.
Oh, I'd love to map the neighborhood, yeah.
Because understanding how the brain fails in different ways actually sharpens your overall editing skills.
Okay, so we know homophones sound the same but look different. What about homographs?
Homographs flip that dynamic entirely. They share the exact same spelling on the page, but they diverge in pronunciation and meaning.
Give me an example.
A classic example is the heavy metal lead, spelled L-E-A-D, versus the verb to lead, also spelled L-E-A-D.
Oh, right.
Your eye sees the same word, but your brain has to use the surrounding context to assign the correct phonetic sound.
Then there are eggcorns, which might be my absolute favorite category of linguistic error.
They are so fun.
It's a semantic reanalysis. It happens when someone mishears a common idiom or phrase, but their brain desperately tries to repair the audio by substituting words that actually make logical sense to them.
Right, they possess this beautiful internal logic.
Yes.
The most famous example is saying, for all intents and purposes, instead of the correct phrase, for all intents and purposes.
Which I hear all the time.
You can completely understand why a human brain would autocorrect to intensive purposes.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds plausible.
Right. It implies a deep, rigorous purpose. The brain is trying to build meaning out of a phonetic blur.
Exactly.
Another great one is nip it in the butt instead of nip it in the bud.
Oh, that's a classic.
A bud is horticultural. Like, it requires you to know about pruning plants. But a dog biting someone on the backside? That is a highly visceral, physical action that makes instant sense to a listener.
The brain chooses the more relatable imagery every time.
It really does. And finally, rounding out the neighborhood, we have malapropisms.
Right, malapropisms. These are sound-alike word swaps, but unlike eggcorns, they don't retain a logical meaning. They usually produce a comical, nonsensical effect.
Like what?
Like saying he is the very pineapple of politeness instead of the pinnacle of politeness.
The pineapple of politeness. That is amazing.
The term itself is actually named after Mrs. Malaprop, a character in Richard Brinsley Sheridan's 1775 play, The Rivals, who constantly swapped sophisticated words for absurd, similar-sounding ones.
Okay, so the mental map is solid. But I want to play devil's advocate for a moment regarding the core homophone trap we started with.
So for it.
We have walked through the Viking history, the Johnson standardization, and the cognitive forcing tests. But let's look at the reality of modern communication.
Okay.
If you text a colleague, make sure their paperwork is signed, and you accidentally use THERE, your colleague still knows exactly what you mean.
True.
Native readers decode these errors from context almost instantaneously. The actual transfer of information doesn't break down at all.
It rarely does.
So, are we just being grammar snobs by policing this so heavily?
You know, this raises a really important question. And it is actually the center of a major ongoing debate among composition researchers and educators. Yeah. Is it truly worth spending valuable classroom time drilling homophone distinction when we could be teaching higher-order cognitive skills like logical argumentation and paragraph structure?
Especially since, like I said, the reader's comprehension rarely suffers. It can feel a bit like enforcing a rule purely for the sake of enforcing a rule.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look beyond just the raw transfer of data and examine the real-world social consequences.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Defenders of rigid grammar instruction point to the social penalty. Think about the sheer volume of online mockery directed at people who use the wrong version of your.
Oh, yeah. People can be brutal online.
Entire communities exist just to highlight these typos. The social mockery is wildly disproportionate to the actual loss of meaning.
That's very true.
Researchers actually identify this as a literacy signaling effect. Rightly or wrongly, readers judge your overall confidence, education, and attention to detail based on these highly specific visible markers.
Which completely reframes the typo. I mean, it's no longer just a transcription slip. It's a potential professional liability.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Especially if you are sitting down in a testing center to take the TEAS or HESI exam to gain entry into a nursing program?
Right. Why do they care?
Yeah, why do these massive gatekeeping exams dedicate entire sections to measuring your ability to discriminate between homophones?
It ultimately boils down to a single concept: credibility.
Credibility.
Let's contextualize this within the high-stakes environment of nursing. When you are working in a clinical setting, your documentation is not just a casual note to yourself or a text to a friend.
Right.
A patient chart is a legally binding medical record. It will be reviewed by attending physicians, by hospital administrators, and potentially it will be scrutinized by courts of law.
The stakes couldn't be higher. Imagine you are charting at hour 11 of a grueling 12-hour shift.
Oh, you're exhausted.
Exactly. The fluorescent lights are buzzing, multiple monitors are beeping, and your cognitive load is just maxed out.
And that is the exact moment your procedural memory tries to take the wheel.
Yeah.
Now, to be absolutely clear, writing THERE instead of THEIR on a patient's chart is not a fatal medical error.
No, nobody's physical health is going to be compromised by that specific spelling mistake.
Right. But that typo acts as a powerful proxy. It is a highly visible proxy for your baseline attentiveness under pressure.
That makes total sense.
If an auditor or a lawyer is reviewing a chart and it is riddled with basic homophone errors, their conclusion isn't, oh, this clinician struggled with 9th century Viking loanwords.
Right.
Their conclusion is, this clinician was careless. They weren't paying attention to the details.
Because in nursing, meticulous precision is the foundation of the job.
Yes, these entrance exams are testing your raw capacity to maintain that precision and override your autopilot, even when you're rushed and stressed.
It's about demonstrating that your vigilance doesn't slip, no matter the cognitive load. It signals to everyone reading your documentation that you are fully present, actively engaged, and habitually double-checking your work.
It proves you possess the discipline to apply cognitive friction when it matters most.
Well, this has been an incredibly revealing deep dive into a trap we all fall into. Let's quickly lock in the 5 essential takeaways for you to keep in your mental toolkit, whether you are heading into an exam or just drafting an important email.
Sounds good.
Number 1, the functional definitions. There is your spatial placeholder or dummy subject. There proves ownership. And there is the contraction for they are.
Got it.
Number 2, standard spell check is historically blind to these errors because all three are legitimate dictionary-approved words. Technology won't save you from a transcription slip.
Right.
Number 3, always deploy the expansion test for there. If forcing the words they are into the sentence creates nonsense, you have the wrong word.
Fails instantly.
Number 4, rely on the substitution test for there. If swapping in or my keeps the structural logic intact, you are good to go. And number 5, remember that mixing these up doesn't mean you are uneducated. You are simply dealing with the fallout of a 1,000-year-old Viking linguistic invasion that Noah Webster froze into place.
It really is a remarkable legacy for 3 little words.
It is.
And honestly, looking at the history of how this collision occurred leaves me thinking about where this is all heading next.
Oh, like what?
Well, we noted how traditional spell check software fails because it only validates letter strings. It just checks the database to see if the word exists.
Right.
But consider the current trajectory of AI writing assistants.
Oh, that's true.
We're rapidly entering an era where software doesn't just scan the letters. It is beginning to computationally understand the context, the semantic meaning, and the complex grammatical roles of our sentences.
That is a profound shift in how we interact with the written word.
It really is. It makes you wonder if software finally learns to read grammatical intent perfectly. This 1,000-year-old phonological collision might eventually be entirely solved by machines. The software will instantly recognize that a possessive pronoun belongs there, not a spatial placeholder.
So it'll just fix it for you.
Right. These homophone errors could become a total relic of the past, a quaint anxiety that future generations won't even understand why we stressed over.
A fascinating thought to leave on. But until that day arrives and the machines take the wheel entirely, we still have to consciously override our own autopilot.
We do indeed.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the words you use every day, and the next time you are about to hit send on that critical email, just take one extra second to apply some cognitive friction to your THERES.